Sonny Liston. Sonny Liston had 19 arrests, armed robbery, assaulting a police officer. That one ended with the cop head first in a trash can. By the late 1950s, the mob owned his contract. Frankie Carbo and Blinky Palermo, two of the most powerful organized crime figures in the Northeast, held the majority stake. His fists measured 15 inches around. His reach was 84 inches, longer than Lennox Lewis. George Foreman sparred with him once and said Liston turned him into a runner, a guy just trying to get away from the jab. Trainers who worked with him said his jab felt like getting hit with a right hand. Floyd Patterson was heavyweight champion from 1956. Liston was the #1 contender for years. Cus D'Amato, Patterson's manager, simply refused to make the fight. Instead, Patterson defended against Pete Rademacher, a man making his professional debut, and Brian London, who had just lost his previous fight. Liston sat and waited. Patterson kept finding other options. President Kennedy's advisors reportedly urged Patterson to avoid Liston in 1962 on the grounds that a Liston championship would be a national embarrassment. Patterson finally agreed to fight him that September. It lasted 2 minutes and 6 seconds. The rematch lasted 4 seconds longer. Patterson left the arena in a fake beard and dark glasses. Eddie Mackin was the #1 contender before Liston beat him in September 1960. Mackin went 12 hard rounds, lost a decision, and afterward accused Liston's corner of rubbing illegal medication on his shoulders during clinches, something that transferred to Mackin's forehead and dripped into his eyes. "I thought my eyes would burn out of my head," Mackin said. The same complaint came from Muhammad Ali 4 years later. Mackin never got a title shot while Liston held the belt. His fight with Patterson finally came in 1964, after Liston had already lost the title to Ali. Gennady Golovkin. Between 2008 and 2016, Golovkin knocked out 23 opponents in a row. His knockout ratio in middleweight championship fights was 88.1%, the highest in the division's history. Sparring partners reported getting bruises on their arms just from blocking his jab. One said it felt like Golovkin had something in his gloves. He didn't. His jab was built different. By 2013, Golovkin had made 8 straight title defenses and was calling out Sergio Martinez, the recognized world middleweight champion at the time. Martinez's own advisor, Samson Lukowicz, publicly said Martinez wanted the fight, but told him not to take it unless he was at 100%. Martinez spent the next year recovering from knee surgery, then fought Miguel Cotto's sparring partner, then lost his title to Cotto in 2014. The Triple G fight never happened. Cotto won the WBC middleweight title in December 2014 and immediately had a problem. Golovkin was the mandatory challenger. Cotto's team paid Golovkin $800,000 in a step-aside fee to clear the path for a Canelo fight instead. Cotto stood in a post-fight press conference and when asked about Golovkin, just made a face. His manager later said the $800,000 payment was a legal matter they would rather not discuss. Cotto fought Canelo in November 2015, lost, and retired the following year. He never fought Golovkin. Golovkin made 20 consecutive middleweight title defenses, tied with Bernard Hopkins for the most in divisional history. He built that record in an era when the biggest names in the division were busy paying him to go away. Charlie Burley. Charlie Burley finished his career with 83 wins, 12 losses, 2 draws, with 50 knockouts. He knocked Archie Moore down 3 times in one fight. He beat Fritzy Zivic 3 times, the third so lopsided that Zivic spent the final rounds just trying to survive. He never fought for a world title, not because he couldn't beat the champions, but because the champions wouldn't fight him. He was part of a circle of black fighters in the 1940s that no champion would go near. The group included Holman Williams, Jimmy Bivens, Elmer Ray, and Lloyd Marshall. Between them, they fought each other 62 times because the title holders simply refused to engage. Burley fought Williams 7 times alone. When no one in his weight class would take him, he started fighting light heavyweights and heavyweights just to stay active. Sugar Ray Robinson and his manager George Gainford openly admitted to bypassing Burley. Robinson offered Burley a low purse split. Burley rejected it, and the fight died there. Robinson reportedly said he was too pretty to fight Burley. Gainford's explanation was simpler. He just said Burley's style was the kind that could give Ray a real problem. After Zivic lost to Burley the 3rd time, his manager Luke Carney bought out Burley's contract. Not to promote him, to freeze him out. Zivic went on to fight Henry Armstrong for the welterweight title. Burley, ranked ahead of Zivic in the ratings at the time, watched from the outside. He never got the call. Shakur Stevenson. Shakur Stevenson is 25-0. He won titles at featherweight, super featherweight, lightweight, and junior welterweight. In his fight against Jamel Herring, he landed 164 punches to Herring's 87 and still got criticized afterward for not being exciting enough. Lomachenko's team tried to explain why their guy passed on the fight. The quote they landed on was, "He's like the Matrix 2.0. You can't hit him with a handful of rice." In 2017, Stevenson was brought into Lomachenko's training camp as a sparring partner. Lomachenko was preparing for his fight with Guillermo Rigondeaux. Stevenson was a teenager coming off an Olympic silver medal. He said he gave Lomachenko problems. Looking back at it years later, Stevenson's read on why the professional fight never happened was direct. If I'm Lomachenko and I see him all grown up, bigger and stronger, and I see what he was doing as a kid, I probably wouldn't test the water. I really wouldn't want to see that guy.
If I'm Lomachenko and I know he was, 126 pounds at the time, he was a kid. Now I see him all grown up, he bigger, stronger, and I seen what he was doing as a kid, I'll probably be like, why would I test the water with him? Like, I wouldn't really want to see that guy.
Lomachenko retired in June 2025 without the fight ever being made. Gervonta Davis was the other name that stayed attached to Stevenson for years without resolution. Stevenson called him out publicly multiple times. Davis's camp received a formal offer and went quiet. Davis fought Lamont Roach instead. Stevenson sent a public message telling Davis to stay focused because Roach was ready to tap his chin. The fight between Davis and Stevenson still has not happened. Mike McCallum. Mike McCallum retired with 49 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw, with 36 knockouts, and never stopped in 55 professional fights. He won world titles at super welterweight, middleweight, and light heavyweight. His nickname was the Body Snatcher because of what he did to the ribs. He trained at Kronk Gym in Detroit under Emanuel Stewart, the same gym as Thomas Hearns. McCallum sparred Hearns regularly and beat him up in the gym enough times that he eventually went to Stewart and asked for the fight. Stewart told him absolutely not. McCallum left Kronk shortly after. Years later, he said it plainly. "I went to train with Emanuel Stewart, Thomas Hearns, Milton McCrory, and all those guys. I fought Braxton, McCrory, and sparred Thomas Hearns. They knew how good I was and didn't want to fight me or spar me afterward." By 1984, McCallum was 21-0 and the mandatory WBA challenger to Roberto Duran's junior middleweight title. Duran chose not to fight him. Instead, Duran vacated and pursued a more lucrative fight against Hearns for the WBC title. The WBA stripped Duran. McCallum won the vacant title without ever getting Duran in the ring. He spent the rest of the decade calling for the Four Kings. Hagler never responded. Leonard was at a different weight. Hearns never came back around. McCallum said, "I don't think. I know. I made a big mistake. I went to train with them. They knew how good I was." David Benavidez. David Benavidez is 30-0 with 24 knockouts. He spent 5 consecutive years ranked #1 at super middleweight by the Ring magazine. Mike Tyson, when asked which current fighter he would avoid, named Benavidez without hesitation. He called him the Mexican Monster. The nickname fit. Benavidez walks opponents down, drills the body until the arms drop, then goes upstairs. He does it every fight, at high volume, and nobody has found a way to stop it. Canelo Alvarez was the undisputed super middleweight champion. Benavidez was the WBC mandatory challenger. The fight never happened. For over 3 years, Canelo held the title, while Benavidez sat as the mandatory, calling him out publicly, blasting him on social media, showing up at press conferences uninvited. Canelo fought Edgar Berlanga instead. Benavidez called that matchup trash. By 2024, it became clear the fight was not going to happen at 168. Benavidez moved up to light heavyweight and won the WBC title there. Canelo told reporters in early 2026 that he never rejected the fight. "We'll see later," he said. David Morrell was unbeaten, physically imposing, and talked about as one of the most dangerous fights available in boxing before he and Benavidez met in February 2025. He stood in front of Benavidez and paid for it. Benavidez threw over 1,000 combined punches across the fight and won by scoring decision. Morrell went from unbeaten prospect to a guy with a loss on his record in one night. Winky Wright. Winky Wright's guard was so tight that opponents spent entire fights trying to find a way through it, and never did. He held his gloves high, tucked his chin behind his left shoulder, and fired a jab that barely anyone got past clean. Bernard Hopkins had to resort to holding, wrestling, and fouling just to grind out a decision against him. Shane Mosley fought him twice and lost both times. Trinidad connected on only 17% of his punches against Wright and never landed a single flush shot on the chin in 12 rounds. Oscar De La Hoya and Wright were linked for years and never fought. Wright called him out repeatedly. De La Hoya's side made 2 lowball offers on purse splits, both of which Wright rejected. De La Hoya went after Fernando Vargas instead, knocked him out, and used that win to justify not needing to fight Wright. Wright beat Vargas on points in 2001. De La Hoya never acknowledged it as a reason to pursue the fight. By the time Wright forced the issue publicly in the mid-2000s, De La Hoya had moved on. Felix Trinidad came out of retirement in 2005 looking for a showcase fight. His camp chased Wright, not the other way around. When the fight stalled over money, Don King came in personally and added cash to secure the contract. Trinidad connected on 17% of his shots and never hurt Wright once. The scorecards were 120 to 107 and 119 to 108 twice. Trinidad's comeback ended that night, and he never fought again. Guillermo Rigondeaux. Guillermo Rigondeaux won 2 Olympic gold medals for Cuba in 2000 and 2004, and defected during a tournament in 2007 by walking away from the Cuban national team in the middle of a trip to Venezuela. He turned professional in 2009 at 28 years old. By 2013, he was the unified super bantamweight champion and widely regarded as the most technically complete boxer alive. His punch output was low, and his knockouts were rare, but his defense was essentially impenetrable. In over 20 professional fights, he was never hurt, never dropped, and never seriously troubled. Leo Santa Cruz was the most recognizable name in the super bantamweight and featherweight divisions during Rigondeaux's prime. The fight was discussed for years and never made. Santa Cruz's side cited the size disadvantage as the reason, with Santa Cruz being significantly larger and naturally heavier. Rigondeaux publicly called him out multiple times. Santa Cruz moved up in weight and chased bigger paydays. The fight died without a formal offer ever being made public. Abner Mares held a world title at super bantamweight and later featherweight, and was another name attached to the avoided Rigondeaux conversation. Mares fought Santa Cruz twice in high-profile matchups. Rigondeaux remained available the entire time. When Rigondeaux finally moved up to face Lomachenko at lightweight in 2017, he was 2 full weight classes above his best fighting weight and retired on his stool after 6 rounds. The story of his career at the weight where he actually belonged was mostly a story of empty chairs across the ring at press conferences. Paul Williams. Paul Williams stood 6 feet 1 inch and fought at welterweight, a division where most opponents topped out around 5 feet 8. His reach was 79 inches, longer than most light heavyweights. He threw somewhere between 80 and 100 punches per round, every round, for 12 rounds. He beat Antonio Margarito, beat Winky Wright twice, beat Carlos Quintana twice, and beat Quintana so badly the second time that Quintana's team stopped the fight after 5 rounds. He finished his career with wins over 7 world champions. Miguel Cotto was the biggest name tied to the avoided Paul Williams reputation. Williams was ranked in the top 5 at welterweight for years, while Cotto held the WBO title. The fight was never made. Cotto fought Zab Judah, DeMarcus Corley, and Carlos Quintana during that window. Quintana was the same fighter Williams had already stopped. When Cotto finally fought Quintana in 2008, Williams sat ringside and watched. Cotto knocked Quintana out in 5 rounds, the same opponent Williams had beaten twice. Shane Mosley was the other name that circled Williams without ever committing. Mosley was coming off his win over Margarito in 2009 when Williams's name came up as a logical next fight. It never materialized. Mosley fought next instead. Williams's career ended in 2012 when he was hit by a car while riding a motorcycle and suffered a spinal cord injury that left him paralyzed from the waist down. He never got the fights he deserved while he was healthy enough to take them.